Hello and welcome to another episode of the conversion of Granny Grumman. In this episode, we'll be building a wall that separates the driving area from the living area. The first step is to measure and cut out the 2x4 framing for the wall. Using the same technique featured in my last van build video, I'll use a hammer to hit the 2x4 to put an impression of the bolt head so that I know exactly where to drill it so that I can attach it to the ceiling. With all the holes properly marked then drilled, I can now attach the 2x4 to the ceiling to begin the frame of the wall. With the first piece of the frame installed, it's simply a matter of measuring, cutting, and placing the rest of the frame in place. After measuring everything to ensure that it's square, I used wood screws to hold it all together. Since the van is going to be used as a recording studio for drums, I want to be sure to remove any rattle that I can from the van. So I'll go ahead and drill holes in the frame, then drill a hole through these door channels, and then use some 1/4-20 hardware to attach it to the frame to reduce a bunch of the vibration. Now that the frame is complete and attached to the door channels and the subfloor via wood screws, we can begin cutting out the plywood. Using some leftover wood from building the ceiling, I'll shim the plywood into place to give it a nice tight fit against the wall and the ceiling. To attach the plywood to the 2x4 frame, I'll be using wood screws. To install them, I drill a hole so that the wood doesn't split, then use a countersink bit so the head is flush with the wood, and then drive the screw home with an impact. With the plywood temporarily attached to the frame, I can now mark out the doorway so I can cut it out. With the doorway cut out, I'll now shim the plywood back into place and then use wood screws to hold it up, then repeat this process for the other side. With one side done, it's now time to insulate the wall. The windows on Granny Grumman are quite big and quite thin, so they are a terrible thermal loss, thus why I'm going a little overkill for the insulation. I'll be installing one layer of Havelock wool, then two 1.5-inch sections of polyiso foam, and then duct taping them so they're airtight. Now that the insulation is installed, it's simply a matter of repeating the same steps used for the other side to cut out and attach the plywood to the 2x4 framing. Now that the wall's complete, it's time to stain it the same color as the ceiling. This plywood already comes pre-sealed, so this is merely an aesthetic stain. And just like that, the wall is almost done. All that's left is to create a door and attach some trim to clean up the edges, but that's not going to be until the rest of the walls and the floor are done.